Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into one of the most intense and complex geopolitical standoffs unfolding right now. We're going to cut through the noise and look strictly at the facts coming out of a highly critical diplomatic event, break down the timeline of exactly how we got here, and unpack the severe global stakes involved. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so let's get right into understanding what is actually happening on the world stage. To really grasp the sheer gravity of the situation, we have to start right here with this quote: "Inevitable and extremely damaging consequences for the entire international community." Now, that is not just some random speculation, right? That is a direct, stark warning delivered by Russian President Vladimir Putin to US President Donald Trump. When the rhetoric at the very highest levels of international politics hits a pitch like this, the whole world absolutely has to pay attention.
All right, Section 1, the Moscow-Washington Call.
To ground this massive global crisis, let's zoom in on a single, concrete, breaking news event between the Kremlin and the White House. And the magic number you need to know here is 90. The phone call between President Trump and President Putin lasted for over 90 minutes. In the high-stakes realm of diplomacy, an hour and a half is, well, it's an absolute eternity for two world leaders to be on the line together. It just goes to show the immense complexity of what they were dealing with. According to the reports, Moscow actually initiated this call, and the dialogue focused heavily on Iran, along with the possibility of a ceasefire in Ukraine.
Now, despite that ominous warning about damaging consequences we just looked at, Kremlin foreign policy aide Yuri Ushakov officially described the tone of the conversation as friendly, frank, and businesslike. It's kind of wild, right? A businesslike tone masking a conversation about a potentially devastating regional war. Ushakov actually noted that Russia offered up some proposals during this call to help resolve the ongoing conflict over Tehran's nuclear program, though he didn't really elaborate on how Trump responded to those ideas.
Moving on to Section 2, Roots of the Conflict. So how exactly did these two leaders end up discussing the fate of the Middle East? Just look at how incredibly fast this escalation moved. In February of 2026, we saw the US-Israel attack on Iran. And by that spring, what started as a targeted action had violently evolved, spreading like wildfire across the wider Middle East. Fast forward to today, and we are basically in a holding pattern. We've got a very fragile ceasefire in place, which is temporarily pausing the widespread hostilities. But remember, a pause is definitely not a peace deal.
Which brings us to Section 3, Deadlocks and Rising Tensions.
So the fighting might be paused, but the peace talks themselves, yeah, they are totally frozen right now. There are basically two massive, immovable roadblocks preventing a permanent peace deal. First, the future of Iran's nuclear program, and second, control over the Strait of Hormuz. These are the specific leverage points that both sides are just fiercely fighting over. It's a fundamental deadlock over nuclear capabilities on one hand and territorial maritime control on the other. And when you compare the two sides, you see vastly diverging strategies on how to break that deadlock. On one side, we have Russia's stance. During their call, Putin actually stated he supported Trump's decision to extend the truce with Iran just to allow more time for negotiations. The Kremlin is leaning hard into diplomatic efforts. But on the flip side, we are seeing a totally different tactical approach from Washington. Reports indicated that U.S. Central Command is actively preparing for a short and powerful wave of strikes. So the U.S. strategy appears to be using the threat of imminent military pressure to actively force Iran to the signing table. To truly understand the urgency and, frankly, the aggressive public posture coming from the United States right now, you just have to look at the president's own words. On the platform Truth Social, Donald Trump posted an image of himself holding a gun right alongside this text, "No more Mr. Nice Guy. Iran can't get their act together. They don't know how to sign a non-nuclear deal. They'd better get smart soon." I mean, it is a very stark public display of frustration with these deadlocked negotiations. And it's a clear signal that the U.S. military preparations we just discussed are backed by serious intent from the very top. Let's zoom out for Section 4, the global stakes. So why should you care? Why is the entire world watching these peace talks? And why did Putin warn of consequences for the international community? Well, the answer mostly lies right here, the Strait of Hormuz. Remember, this was one of those two core disagreements causing the massive deadlock. You see, this isn't just some distant territorial dispute over a stretch of water. The Strait of Hormuz is an absolutely critical maritime choke point. Whoever controls this specific area basically dictates international trade and global energy markets. If a conflict pops off here, it disrupts the flow of energy to the entire planet, and that translates to immediate severe economic shocks for all of us. So, a failure to maintain this current truce or a failure to resolve those deadlocks over the nuclear program and the Strait doesn't just affect Iran, Israel, and their immediate neighbors. Because of our highly interconnected global energy supply chain, it becomes a literal threat to the entire international community. The stakes, honestly, could not be any higher.
So, we're all left standing on a razor's edge. You've got Moscow pushing for extended diplomacy while warning of disaster, and Washington publicly losing its patience, preparing a powerful military alternative to force an agreement. The huge question we're left with is, will this fragile truce hold long enough for these fundamental deadlocks to be resolved, or, exactly as warned in that 90-minute phone call, are highly damaging global consequences truly inevitable? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep a close eye on the Strait, and as always, keep questioning the headlines.